I'll try speaking without a microphone. If you have trouble hearing, please let me know and we'll use the technology then. Good evening and thank you so much for coming. I'm very glad to see you all here. And before we start, I wanted to ask you a quick question. Those of you who read even a single book in the Ringing Cedars Anastasia series, would you mind raising your hand? Oh, thank you. Does any of you mind saying a few words about your impressions from reading these books and what you would expect from this evening? Because this way I can match what I present to the interests of audience. Yes, please. Yeah, we'll address that, thank you, because quite a few people have this kind of experience and do not see any problem in it taking you a while to read the series. It took me, as I will tell you in a minute, 3 years even to open the first book. Some 10 years ago, my mother gave me a book to read, and she told me, Leo, it's a recommended reading in our yoga class, and it's so good that you must absolutely read it. And at that time, the books in the Russian language were not yet available through the bookstores, so she had to go to some obscure warehouse at the on the outskirts of the city of Moscow, and she spent more than 1 hour in the line of people who came to this warehouse to buy this specific book. And as they were waiting there in the line, it turned out that some people were coming there for the third or for the fourth time and were taking away entire cartons of books to give to everybody they knew. This sounded really as a terrific introduction, but when I looked at the cover of the book that my mother was handing to me, I thought, gosh, is this the life-changing book? The problem was that Anastasia is a very common girl's name in today's Russia. There was a blonde, a portrait of a blonde on the cover, and to make matters worse, the author's last name, Maigret, in the Russian language is spelled exactly the same way as the French Maigret, the detective from the detective novels by Georges Simenon, very popular in Russia. So, and it was also printed not even on regular book paper, but on newsprint paper. So a small flimsy volume with the blonde on the cover, a girl's name for the title, and the author's, what I thought it was a pen name borrowed from a detective novel. So I thought, gosh, something must be terribly wrong with me if my mother believes I'm into reading such literature. But I didn't really want to upset her because I saw that she was really concerned about that and really wanted me to read this book. So I thanked mother, took the book, put it on my shelf, and forgot about it completely. 3 years later, I was in America working on my master's degree in natural resources management at Indiana University, Bloomington, and my wife needed to go back to Russia on a short visit. She's coming back to America, all beaming with delight, and tells me, Leo, your mother gave me a book to read. And it is so fascinating, you should absolutely read it, it will change your life. And she's taking out of her suitcase exactly the same book my mother had given me 3 years earlier. But now it turns out there were 2 more books in the same series by the same author, The Ringing Cedars of Russia, book 2, and book 3, The Space of Love. And I looked at the cover of the second and the third one, and they were worse than the first one. In the Russian edition, the cover of The Ringing Cedars of Russia, and at that time, of course, the title even itself sounded as though it was coming from a fairy tale, But the cover of the Ringing Cedars of Russia featured an outstretched palm of a man's hand with a wedding ring and a Christian body cross in it. When you read the book, it makes sense. You remember this chapter about the KGB officer saving Vladimir and then giving him these two items to sell and to start the publication of the books. But when you have not read the books, it was really giving me an impression of a book on Christian morals. I have nothing against either wedding rings or Christian body crosses, but at the age of 25, I was not that much interested in reading religious literature, and it was really giving this wrong impression. So I thought, gosh, I should have read the books 3 years ago. There was just one. But now that it was my wife and not my mother who insisted on my reading the material, I didn't really have much choice. So reluctantly, I opened the first book, Anastasia, and started reading. And as many of you might probably relate to my experience, I could not put it down until I finished the last book that was available at the time, book 3, The Space of Love. And we had to wait for another year for the next installment, just because the rest of the books were not even yet written. And it was a great adventure, just discovering more and more of this inspiring information. But more importantly, just as promised by my mother, our lives have really taken a very different course after we've read these books. My wife and I met at one of Russia's best business schools, and I was majoring in international economics, and I received a master's degree in international economics, and she was majoring in international banking and finance. So we were hoping that after graduating, we would be, like all normal people, making careers in a large company in the middle of a large city, have a lot of money, a large apartment, a luxurious car, going to resorts, not having children until we're 30 plus, because children is a nuisance, and you need to have more energy for building your career and having fun, right? Well, I'm 32 now, and we already have 3 children, and I want to have more. So really very positive changes took place in our life. So, but instead of making the career, we went and pitched our tent in the middle of an abandoned agricultural field in one of Russia's first eco-villages that started sprouting all over the country after the Ringing Cedars books were originally written and published. And you know, at that point, seeing us building our log cabin with our own hands, not having grid electricity in there, getting our water bucket by bucket from our well, and heating the home with wood, and growing our own potatoes, and not vaccinating our children, giving home birth, you know, it was a bit overwhelming for my parents, and at that point even my mother regretted she had given me the book. But you know, for me it was a very positive change. I can compare my life over the past 10 years to the lives of those who went to the same business school with me. They're also in their early 30s, between 30 and 35. Most of them do not have children. Many are not married or do not have a long-term partner. Those who married, many of them already divorced. And they work long hours and in very stressful jobs, cannot get by without a glass of wine or a bottle of beer every evening, just so as to be able to relax. So this is the kind of lifestyle that they have, and I compare my life today to the way of life that they have, and I like a lot my mother's having given us the book. But it was not all, you know. We were creating this new reality for ourselves, but we realized that no way we can create an island of paradise just for our family if the rest of the world is going on the path it is now on. So I was filled with a lot of inspiration and a desire to share these messages with people in the English-speaking world. I once got a visit from a friend and who asked me, Leo, do you know if Anastasia is a big bestseller in the English-speaking world? Because he knew I had come a few hours earlier from America with my master's degree. And I thought, you know, honestly, I do not think anybody even heard about these books in the English-speaking world, even though at that time they had sold millions of copies in the Russian language already. And he said, well, what do you think is wrong with the people in the English-speaking world? Well, he used different language, but this was the substance of his kind. Well, I looked into that, and it turned out that in the year 2001, there was already a translation of Anastasia in the English language released, but there were some problems with it. It was published in Russia by the same publishing house that publishes Vladimir Megred's books in the Russian language. It had the same cover, the same paper, and to make matters worse, it was translated into the English language by a woman who doesn't speak very good English, a native Russian language speaker. But she was so excited and determined to enlighten people in Britain, in America, and in the rest of the English-speaking world that she took a thick dictionary and translated Anastasia with a thick dictionary in her hand. I got myself a copy of this very first version, read the first 3 pages, and realized just why it was not a big bestseller in the English-speaking world. Because it was not English. And it was frustrating. I wrote a letter to the author saying, dear Mr. Megre, you know, your books changed my life, and I know have touched the hearts of millions of people already in Russia and in other countries where the books are available, and they really deserve a much better fate than the translation which is now available. And I included with my letter a table. The first column was the Russian original, the second one was the English translation in this first version, and the third one was what this English translation actually meant in Russian. And the list of these distortions from the first 3 pages of the books, this table was 5 pages long, because literally every sentence had something wrong with it. I received the letter back from the author inviting me to come and visit with him and to discuss just how to publish these books appropriately. And at that time I was going to America for my doctorate degree in forestry at the University of Missouri. We met and we agreed that when I go to America I will investigate how bestsellers are published. And at that point my vision was to go and approach large publishing houses like Penguin or Random House or HarperCollins, and I knew that given the great success of the books in the Russian language, they would probably be interested in publishing them in the English translation. But interestingly, for as long as I had this vision of just helping Vladimir sell his English translation rights to a big publishing house, he was not giving me any positive response. He was not just answering my emails, letters, or phone calls. There was complete silence. He was not saying no, but he was not saying yes either. 1 year later, I had an idea. I went to the university library and I got from the library the English translations of Russian classics such as Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, published by the large publishing houses such as Penguin. And I went to the same library and borrowed from it the Russian original. So I got the originals and the translations. I came home and started comparing them sentence by sentence and page by page. And I regret to inform you that unless you can speak and read Russian, none of you have probably ever been able to enjoy a real work of Russian classical literature. It's that serious. You know, the problem is that the Russian language is really a language of the heart. Anastasia says that it has links with Sanskrit, and when I looked into this further, it turned out that yes, the Russian language is approximately of the same age as Sanskrit, and has so much in common with it that the Sanskrit scholars who come to Russia today can understand modern Russian without interpreter, just from their knowledge of Sanskrit. And each word is